Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. We're just going to give it a few minutes while everyone tunes in. Thank you. All right, welcome everyone. We will be recording this webinar just to let you know. So just a minute and we'll get started. Yep. Okay, great. So thank you again all for joining tonight's webinar, the Back to School Edge, Skills and Strategies for a Stress-Free Start to the School Year. So glad you all were able to join. And I know it's back to school season, meaning some of you have already started school. A lot of college students are now enrolling and starting their first week of classes. And still we have some students starting after the first week of September. I'm Dr. Anita. I'm an executive function coach, as well as a cognitive and developmental psychologist by training. Been coaching students for 15 plus years, and students of all ages, from young children to adult learners who are pursuing lifelong learning goals. I'm also a professor of psychology at the Georgia Institute of Technology and founder and CEO of Zen Edge Coaching. So what we'll cover today is the stress-free transition back to school, stellar skills, strategies, and practices for success. And then we'll end with a Q&A and some resources and more information on upcoming webinars. When I talk to parents today about what it's like in this season of back to school, a lot of them tell me words like anxious, I'm feeling excited, nervous. Students are feeling motivated, but they're also already feeling tired after the first week. So today I hope to help you understand some strategies and techniques you can employ that will reduce the stress and improve the student performance. So let's start by just asking ourselves why executive function skills even matter. On the left, you see an image of the brain, and I've identified the prefrontal cortex. This is where a lot of executive function skills are housed. And these executive functions are mental processes that help us plan. They help us focus our attention, remember instructions, and even juggle multiple tasks. It's kind of the air traffic control of the brain, the CEO of the brain, as some would say. And strong executive function skills are essential for academic success, but they also apply to managing day-to-day life and help reduce stress and cognitive overload. So these skills, as mentioned, include planning, time management, organization, self-monitoring, and flexible thinking. So let's talk about some ways to enhance our planning skills. First off, students who are high achievers often use these two strategies. They set SMART goals and they use the technique of time blocking. SMART goals are goals that are specific, they're measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Each of these 5 components are really critical for understanding and accomplishing the goals that you set out as a student and as students' parents working with your students. In terms of time blocking, a lot of students that I work with, they often have these long to-do lists on their phone or in their planners, and they don't assign any specific day or time to actually work on the tasks, and the tasks just get longer and longer. They're very large tasks, which need to actually be broken down into smaller sections. And aside from just the work that needs to get done, scheduling times you'll have meals, as well as times you'll rest and study and engage in extracurricular activities, also very important for the student, as well as socializing. So one of the best techniques that a lot of executives and leaders around the world use is called time blocking, where you see on the right, you literally block out times based on how much time you think you will need to allocate for a task or how much is already allocated for you, such as school or work hours. And you try to stick to it as closely as possible. But you also see some gaps where it's important to not schedule every minute of the day. And you can apply it to the weekends as well, so that don't double book yourself for things, or if your students are planning study on the weekend, to make that time bound as well, not to say I'm going to study all day Saturday and then get exhausted by the end of the day. Another stellar skill to apply at the start of the school year and throughout is to get organized and to stay organized. It gets really tough after even just the first week of classes to stay on top of things and keep things organized as you have multiple classes simultaneously launching. But an organized environment includes having a dedicated study area that's clutter-free and distraction-free. Key thing is to actually have a study area that you dedicate to your student where they can be avoiding most distractions. And in addition to that, creating folders for each individual subject is really important, whether that's in the computer, in cloud storage, or even physical folders that help your child keep their assignments and tasks separate by topic. On top of that, it's always important to actually have the things you need accessible and available and in stock. So notebooks, pens, textbooks. A lot of students that I work with have challenges with task initiation. So finding that motivation to even get started with the first step of, okay, I'm ready to do my homework now. And then realizing you can't find a pen or you can't find the notebook for that class just delays starting. And by that time, some students even lose motivation. So it's really important to stay organized and get organized from the first day of school. Another one of my favorite techniques to show students is habit stacking. And I'll share one that several students end up having a challenge with, and it's forgetting their homework at home. And this is completed homework, not homework that they didn't do, but homework that they left on their desk or on their bed or stuffed inside their textbook that they didn't take with them that day to school. So habit stacking is a technique where you apply a habit that you already do to a habit that you're trying to learn. And this is a really great way to start adding good habits and even breaking bad habits if you want to do the opposite. So the solution here that I often give my clients is to pack their backpack the night before so that it's not something they're trying to do as they're rushing out the door, trying to catch the bus or make it to school on time. So one strategy I've shared with one of my recent clients was to pair it with their bedtime. And they already had a good habit of brushing their teeth and washing their face every day, every night. And so we added the third habit of once they're done brushing their teeth, once they're done washing their face, they'll pack their backpack for school the next day. It seems like a very simple thing to do, but so many times the student had forgotten their homework at home, even after working for hours on it at a time. If you'd like, I've actually written a blog post on habit stacking. It's on zenedgecoaching.com, so you can check it out there if you want to know more about habit stacking and how others are using it in their day-to-day life. And this is a term that got popularized by S.J. Scott in his book, Habit Stacking, 97 Small Life Changes That Take 5 minutes or less. So it's a very simple yet effective technique for a lot of students and adults. Another strategy that I want to share for a stellar start to the school year is to create space for your mind. So many students that I work with encounter study skill challenges, and they're often trying to cram for an exam last minute. They think that the information will be fresh in their mind if they've just reviewed it right before the test, and that they will be able to recall it well. But in fact, the brain doesn't work that way. The brain strengthens connections the more and more you get exposed to a topic. So spaced repetition actually involves spacing out review sessions over time. And I often tell students, if you know you have an exam coming up in 2 weeks, don't try to learn all the material 3 nights before the exam and then the night before and 2 nights before the morning of the test. In fact, you should try to start as close to that 2 week mark as possible before the exam, because you can have your first encounter with the material 2 weeks prior, then actually take a break and come back to it on 10 days before the exam and 5 days before the exam, and then 2 nights before the exam and the night of before the exam. And that way you've had multiple encounters with the same material. And what you see on the screen here is the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. It's a very interesting diagram depicting how memories get stored in the brain and how it changes over time. So you see in the far left, this first learned area, memory retention is 100% when you immediately learned something. But over just a period of a day, 20% of that information can be lost. However, if 1 day later, you again and your student again reviewed that same material, you're back up to 100%. Again, 2 days later, that drops to 80%. But if you again review the material, the same material again, you can keep that memory fresh in mind, and you can see that continues as you go along the lapse time, and the brain connections that are storing that information in mind are getting stronger and stronger, and these concepts become more familiar to the students. Another great technique is to focus on high impact tasks, but not only focusing on high impact tasks, but focusing on them at the right time, at your peak time as a student. So this is a two-part strategy. The first is to learn to prioritize your work. And I'll show you the Eisenhower matrix next. It's a great tool to utilize when trying to decide what the priorities are to work on, as well as learning when you absorb information best. Everybody doesn't learn at the same time of day as their peak information absorption rate. So some people are morning larks, some are night owls, and some are third birds, somewhere in between, which they actually have challenges because they're usually in school or work during those times. But if you know as a student or as the parent of a student that your child studies really well in the morning hours, then they should focus on their high impact tasks at that time. Or if they're better at night, once everyone's gone to bed and the house is quiet, then they can be studying at that time, the hardest material that they're trying to learn. Third birds, they can oscillate between the two or try to squeeze in some afternoon study times, especially on the weekends. So let's look at the Eisenhower matrix. It's called the Eisenhower decision matrix because it helps individuals decide what to do when. So this template that I've created really helps a lot of the students I work with figure out what they need to work on now, what they can schedule for later, what they can delegate to somebody else, and even what they can delete off their to-do list. So the way to use this is on the left-hand side. I encourage students to write just one task that they need to do in each box, no more than one per box. And then once they've listed out however many tasks are on their upcoming to-do list, they can then take those tasks and sort them into each of the 4 boxes on the right-hand side. So this is a 2x2 matrix. There's 4 squares and it's quadrants. And you can see along the y-axis, along this vertical, there is a not important and important lines, and there are the boxes saying urgent and not urgent. So this do box that you see are tasks that are important and urgent. Those need to get done right away, as soon as possible. So any tasks that get placed in this one after reviewing all the tasks should be done first, as much as possible. If the task is important and not urgent and it's been placed in this decide box, the student should schedule it for a later time that day or a later time in the week. They can decide this is important, but it's not pressing right now. So I'll decide when to do it. And the best way to do that is to actually put it on the calendar and map it on with a date and time and amount of time it's going to take, as we saw in the time blocking section. If they deem that a task is not important, but it is urgent, they should try to delegate that task. A lot of times this ends up being like household chores or things like that, or like walking the dog. So if possible, to ask for help or to try to delegate it to someone else in the moment and say, do you mind doing the dishes tonight? I have some other urgent tasks to do. I can do them the next night if that's okay. And finally, the fourth box is for something that's not important and not urgent. And we really have to ask ourselves, why are we even working on this? And can it be deleted? Or if not, maybe it needs to go into another box and maybe it is important or maybe it is a little urgent. We need to rethink that. So this Eisenhower decision matrix is a great tool that a lot of students use that I work with, help them prioritize their tasks quickly. And of course, this is Zen Edge coaching. So the Zen element is to incorporate the mindful practices. And this really comes in handy from day one of back to school. It's not something that only works during exam times. Mindful practices have lots of benefits, including reducing stress, increasing focus, and improving emotion regulation. So the beauty of mindful practices is it's not something that you imagine where you have to sit in a quiet room with nothing in it on a pillow and saying chants all night long. It's actually things that are quite subtle, and you can probably do it with other people around and they may not even notice. So 3 practices I like to teach and coach my students on and my clients on are mindful breathing, the body scan, and mindful breaks. Mindful breathing is important for pausing and focusing on the breath for a few moments. Breathing is a very automatic process. So to stop and focus on your breath actually requires your conscious attention. And when you do that, even for a few moments, and if you practice different types of inhaling and exhaling rhythms, then you can actually calm yourself down and really regulate your emotions as a student. This is really great to do before an exam, during an exam, or even after an exam. Even just any moments of anxiety that you're feeling throughout the day. The body scan is another favorite. I have a lot of my clients. They are closing their eyes and they're imagining and walking through mentally the different parts of their body and identifying areas where they feel tense or areas where they feel might be tight. This is often like in their neck area where they feel like, oh, actually, I've been sitting so long, hunched over my books or my computer, and I need to stand up and stretch, or they realize they've been clenching their jaw too long and it can just be relaxed, or they're shrugging their shoulders. So it's just a mental image of scanning through the different parts of your body and how they're feeling, whether or not you can just ground yourself and put your feet down and see what it feels like for a moment to be in that moment. And of course, mindful breaks involve taking short, intentional breaks to reset and refocus. This can be anything from just stepping away from the desk to going out and connecting with nature for a quick 15-minute walk, or practicing some intentional eating where you are savoring the food you're enjoying and trying to reset and refocus. Okay, so for the Zen Edge, this I really want to emphasize is high-performing students integrate all 3 of these aspects of executive function skills, academic strategies, and mindful practices to achieve a reduced stress, stress-free, stellar school year. And they're doing this by developing a daily routine that incorporates executive function skills academic strategies, and mindfulness. They're regularly practicing each one, which leads to sustained success. And they're being open to adjusting their strategies as needed as well. Something that worked for one of my clients when they were in 8th grade no longer worked for them when they're in 10th grade. So they needed to adjust as the demands of school changed and extracurriculars changed, and they found new strategies that worked for them. So, for example, I just wanted to share a day in the life of one of my Zen Edge clients. In the morning, they actually start out with 5 minutes of a mindfulness practice. This one, they like to focus on their breath as soon as they wake up, and then take a look at their schedule for the day and set their priorities. So priorities wise, she sets no more than three in a day, which is a lot to try to accomplish every single day. But it's a good way to identify what's most important for that day to achieve. During the school day, she likes to use academic strategies like active note taking and breath work. This allows her to stay focused because just listening to the class topics and subject for the day is not helpful for her to go home and review her notes later if she's not actively participating in class. And then when things get a little hectic, she often says in between class changes, she'll do some breath work in the hallways to try to prep for her next class. After school, she implements the time blocking schedule because she found that after school, the structure of her day changes quite a bit. So she had a lot of free time after school, unscheduled time actually. And she wanted to study and go for tutoring sessions and also spend time with her family in preparing meals and eating meals, as well as enjoying some rest and more mindfulness at the end of the day. So she tried to time block her schedule, and it was really helpful for her to have time for study session. She joined lacrosse, so that added a few hours that were scheduled for her, and then completed her household, allocated some time for completing her household chores, and ended with packing her backpack and spending 10 minutes reflecting on her day. She really liked to do the gratitude journaling. So that was a really great strategy for her to implement after school. But this is kind of what a day, the life of a Zen Edge client looks like after working with me. So you might be asking what's involved in a coaching session. And I typically lay it out in 50-minute sessions. And so there are starting off with a reconnection. So I'm checking in with the student on how their mental state is and catching up on activities and events since we last met. We're revisiting the plans and commitments that were made during the previous session. And then we're looking ahead and prioritizing what's coming up. What are the tasks, activities, and plans? What are their goals that they're trying to achieve? And then we practice that in some way in strategy in the form of a skill or mindful practice that they can start using right away. And incorporating a mindful moment, reflecting on what was accomplished during the session, as well as a brief mindful practice. And then we spend the last 5 minutes of the session determining what the student commits to work on until the next meeting. And coaching is different from tutoring. A lot of students who come to coaching sessions also engage in tutoring. And tutoring is more focused on subject-based information on a particular class or SAT or ACT prep. But the coaching sessions involve global skills, more skills that can help them perform well in their schooling and skills beyond academics as well, in life as well. A lot of clients, parents will find some strategies that they like and they apply to their life as well, and have incorporated into their family routines after working with me. So I do want to share that you can schedule a complimentary call. It's a 15-minute call with me through the website, zenedgecoaching.com. And I'm happy to share more about what a coaching session looks like and what has been some examples of clients who have benefited from coaching. Okay, so now we'll move to Q&A, and I did have a few questions come in during the registration. So I wanted to check the chat here real quick and see if there's any questions. Can answer those right now, or you can jump into some of the questions that came in through the registration. So feel free to take a minute to pop your questions into the chat. Okay. When do you recommend starting coaching? All right, Chi, great question. So coaching can start right away. Depends on what the schedule allows for your student and what the needs are. But the first step to starting coaching, I actually have a student baseline assessment, which I'll share in a minute. Can share that link and complete the questions to understand where your child is right now, where your student is in the process, and then they can start at any age. I recommend middle school, high school. It's a great time to form some habits that are successful and can translate throughout academics and life as well. Okay, let me see one of the questions that came in through the registration page as well. In the meantime, if anyone else has a question, feel free. Okay, Jeremy asked, my student had a tough time transitioning, challenging year last year. Do you have any tips on how to go back to school and reduce the stress he's feeling? Yeah, that's a great question, Jeremy. It's quite tough coming out of a challenging academic year, but it's really important to acknowledge your child's feelings and how they did in the last year, and remind them that this is an opportunity for a new school year. Some of the strategies I would encourage you to revisit are planning ahead and getting organized with your child right away so that they feel prepared going in, and to try to schedule out using time blocking once they understand what their schedule's like, how their classes are going to be, and even putting things like their exams and important projects onto the calendar so that they're prepared this year to do well, and there are less surprises potentially. All right, great. Are there any other questions? Let's see. Okay, do you work with middle school students or high school students only? Okay, and a great question. Yeah, both middle school students and high school students I've worked with in the past, primarily high school students, but middle school students are welcome to come as well. Their schedules can get quite busy, and we're seeing that they're benefiting starting earlier to build good habits from a younger age that stick with them. So I do encourage completing the student baseline assessment and seeing if this is a good time to start on coaching, or if there's something else that we can work on first. Okay, it's getting a few more questions coming in. Ji Zhang is asking, how do you help students identify their preferred learning styles and incorporate them into their study plans? Yes, so in terms of learning styles, there are many. There's visual learners, auditory learners. Most people are actually able to learn with a combination of those styles. And I work with each student one-on-one to develop a customized coaching plan that benefits them, incorporating whatever strategies they are most effective for them. So whether that is more visual based or more auditory based, that's fine. Some strategies work for some students and some work for others. And as I mentioned, even the same student might have to change strategies as they get older or take on more work. Great question. Okay, and I think we have one more question, and that is, where can we take the assessment? Yes, great question, Chi. So I will be sharing resources with you guys tomorrow, the link to the recorded webinar, as well as the student baseline assessment. Also wanted to share this special gift for all of you who attended the webinar today. If you use the code BTS Edge, Back to School Edge 24, you'll get $50 off your first session. That's valid through September 5th. And also wanted to point out a few more resources for you guys who would like to check out more about coaching. So the website is zenedgecoaching.com. That's on the left-hand side homepage. And then there's also a blog where you'll see a lot of these strategies as well as many more on starting the school year off right and building good habits and mindful practices in the blog. And there's the latest thinking and research that's incorporated into those articles. Student baseline assessment, you'll be getting a link to that tomorrow in the email. So do check that out. If you have any issues, you can contact me through the website and I can send it to you directly. And that again is a way to assess where the student is in terms of executive function skills, academic strategies, and mindful practices as a starting point for coaching. And I'll produce a report after you take that assessment, whether or not you sign up for coaching now or later. You can see that report and understand how your student is doing in those different aspects. Zen Edge Coaching is also on Instagram, so please like and follow and share there for more tips and ways to stay at the top of your game and your student to improve their academic performance. And then we have a list of upcoming events. I'm offering these webinars once a month right now. They're completely free, and I'd love for all of you to join, as well as other parents and students you may know. The next one we'll be doing in the series is on time management, how to set priorities and manage your time effectively. So I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone who came out tonight. And if you have any questions, you can certainly contact me directly, or you can visit our website at www.zenedgecoaching.com. Right. I hope you have a great night. Thank you.